Welcome, y'all, to an episode of Bounce. I'm Lexi.
And I'm Janine, and we are so excited to be doing this episode with you today. What a juicy topic.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Today's episode is inspired by a book that Janine had read and bought me and I read called The Power of Saying No, The New Science of How to Say No That Puts You in Charge of Your Life by Vanessa Patrick. And Janine, why was it such a powerful book for you? What really resonated from it?
Everything. I mean, what I love is that she gives voice and sort of permission for us to have challenges saying no. She explains why it's so difficult for all of us. But what's fantastic is that she offers all these tools and strategies for how to kind of, in some ways, take your power back and say no based on personal policies, which is like a way of setting boundaries, really from this empowered, positive place. And she does it in a way where you don't feel bad that you find it challenging to say no. Plus, she's a social scientist, as am I. So she goes through all the science of saying no or why we don't do that more often. And I just thought that was fabulous. But I was going through stuff in my own life where I really needed to read that book. What was it about the book that was so juicy for you, Lexi?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what sets it apart maybe from other things that talk about this is she doesn't just explain why it's hard for us to say no as human beings, which there's many reasons, but a main reason is just because from a survival standpoint, we want to get along with our tribe and we want to help each other out and do what's good for all of us so that it's easier for us to live. So starting with that, the why it's so difficult for us and talking about how we all do it, but then giving us the tools is what was so powerful, like you mentioned, because she doesn't just be like, all right, saying no is difficult. Yes, thank you. But she says, here's how you can make it easier for yourself and feel empowered when you do so, right? And one of the beautiful things is that she frames it in a way to where saying no isn't being selfish. It's not about that. It's about self-care. Have to put ourselves first always, because if we don't, then we can't show up for the people in our life properly. If I'm not doing what I can to take care of myself and prioritizing my needs first, I can't show up for you or for anybody else as fully as I would like to. And that's where the power lies, right?
Yeah, there's a real shadow to saying yes all the time. And so one of the reasons why I was interested in this topic was at the time I was working with USDA. And so my role was to work with the teams to help them thrive. What I started to notice in all the teams I was working with is the message that I would give them and their leaders were giving them was slow down and take care of yourself. It was a real conscious message that the leaders were giving their folks because people were so burnt out. They were doing, working 2-3 weeks at a time without a day off. It was just, and the people would say, but I can't, but I can't, but I can't. But what about the mission? The mission's not going to die on my watch. It's not going to fail on my watch. And so over time, I recognized they needed help saying no, because they're saying yes all the time was affecting their mental health. People were getting sick, physical health. It was affecting team morale. It was affecting the whole organization because, people weren't behaving the best way they could behave. So that's how getting this book, and then my colleague and I, Todd, we created a course. It was the last thing we did before we both left the federal government last year. It was teaching a course on how to say no. And it was packed, it was sold out, and it was really powerful.
That's awesome. I have a question about teaching that course. So when you were teaching this to the class about, empowering them of how to say no, was there an overarching theme that you saw of why people were saying yes to too much? Was that something you guys discussed?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically they didn't want to ruin relationships and they didn't want to ruin their reputation. So as you were saying earlier, we are physiologically wired to be agreeable, because that's how we get along with our tribe. And from an anthropological perspective, we need to be part of a tribe in order to survive the wild world, right? Which,
Yeah.
feels like the
It's
world's pretty
always
wild right
wild, no
now.
matter
Woo,
what. Yeah.
baby! Hold on to your
Hey,
hat.
we incarnated for a reason right now, and it's to be helping people and empower them to say no today. That's what it is today. So
Yeah, and we're doing bounce at the exact right time, because bounce is all about being resilient and figuring out how to get through the hard stuff. Yeah, so it was preserving relationships and reputation. The irony, when you say yes all the time, you ruin your reputation
yep.
and you hurt your relationships. So that was the on the mat work we got to do with the people in the class, is helping them realize that. So for any of you listeners, I want you to think of, if you're someone who tends to say yes, which most of us tend to until we learn not to, what is the deleterious impact of that?
It does have a negative impact on your relationships. If you're saying yes to too many things, then you get like overloaded and bombarded, and like you don't have enough time to really, like, I guess, be where you need to be at that moment. Honestly, I guess for me, I've always been good at prioritizing time. Like when I'm with people, like I'm with them and I'm not thinking about other things. Like my phone's on airplane mode in another room or not with me. Like I'm very good at that. But like in a workplace setting, I think is like where I've struggled more so, because when there's too much going on and I have like too many projects, then you're giving everything half effort. It's the whole concept of multitasking is what it reminds me of, because then you're not able to give your full to everything. And that's what happens when you say yes to everything. It's just too much. We have to say no to things.
Do you have an example, a work example of that you could
I
share?
just remember at a job where I had an extremely demanding boss. She gave me way too many things. And I remember at one point, she's like, "Do you have updates on these?" And I was like, "No, I have way too much going on right now and I'm overloaded. I need this taken off my plate." And she was not a very nice person. So I ended up leaving a couple months later because she was like, "No, I'm not taking anything off your plate." Right. So that's a good example of a time where I had to say no, because she wouldn't allow me to say no. So I said no to that job and no to being around her and her vampire energy. So that was empowering, right? If you have somebody else telling you that you can't say no to something, that's a problem for sure.
That's a demand. That's not like, you don't really have free will then. I mean, you do,
Exactly.
but that means you have to leave the company as you did.
Yeah, exactly.
But if people don't have the room to say no, and by saying no, what we're meaning is like the way you did it. You said, "I have too much on my plate. I can't do it all. Help reprioritize here. What needs to be due tomorrow? It needs to be new next week. What needs to be due next month?" That's what we mean by saying no. It means having a conversation that will allow you to be more authentic with what's really happening. And you don't always, and I think another reason, Lex, people don't say no is because they're afraid of the response, and you don't always get the response you want. And that your experience is an example of you not getting the response you would have wanted, which is for her to work with you and move some stuff off your plate.
Yeah. And it honestly, when you have to say no in these ways, have these hard conversations with people in your life, it tells you if they should be in your life or not, right? Because with this example, it was very clear, like, this person is toxic and should not be in my life, right?
Yeah.
And I have a recent example on the opposite side. While I'm thinking of it, I recently moved to Denver and I made plans with my good girlfriend out here right when I got here. I made plans with her right after the move, and I was super excited, but I didn't sleep good that weekend and I was working around the clock for a few days. So I was super exhausted. I was so excited to spend time with her, but I was like, I'm not going to be able to show up fully for her and be present. I love her so much and I want this relationship and friendship to flourish for life. So I want to give her my full attention when we're planning things together, especially when we haven't seen each other in months. So I texted her the day before and I was like, hey, look, I have been overworked. I'm so exhausted. I just need to sleep and rest. And can we move our dinner to next week? Because I want to be able to show up fully for you and for me. And she was like, of course, take all the time you need. That's fine with me. And we got together the next week and she was like, honestly, it worked out for me too. I love you so much. And we had the best night ever. And it was incredible.
Yeah, that's good for you. So I think that example is really illustrative of when we say no, there's an underlying need that is even more important. And that's what you're making room for. Or in this case, that's what you're actually saying yes to. So your no to doing it that night was a yes to really taking such good care of that friendship. You said you love her. It was really, how would you express what the
I love her so
underlying?
much. Yeah. I want her to be like one of my best friends until the day
Yeah.
that I die in this life. Like she's amazing.
So you were taking good care of not only you, which was part of the equation, your exhaustion, but of the friendship.
Yeah, exactly. Because I want our time together to like be like, I want to be with her when I'm with her.
Yeah.
And like we got to have that and we had that conversation. I was like, I felt bad rescheduling, and she's like, don't ever feel bad for taking care of yourself. And I was like, you too, like if you have to do it, then you do it. And funny enough, well, not funny because of the situation, it was her birthday this week and we were supposed to go over there, and my best friend was gonna cook his famous chicken curry for us for her birthday dinner last night. So she had to cancel the dinner with us after she was been so excited. She had gotten her shift covered and all this stuff. But because we already had that conversation of, hey, take care of yourself. You can say no to me by saying yes to yourself and yes to nourishing our friendship, and don't feel bad about it, right? And because we had that, it's so easy now because now we don't have to like have this underlying feeling like, oh no, we could show up authentically for each other in our friendship, and it just feels
That,
good to have
yeah,
that.
awesome. 3 snaps. Way to go. See, it reminds me of one of the main tools in the book that we were referring to earlier, that she teaches us that will help you say no. So I'm going to tie it to that because we kind of gave folks a teaser at the beginning, saying she teaches you how. So let's give you one of the tools. And that is, instead of just relying on making moment to moment decisions of yes or no, is ground your decisions in your personal policies. She calls them your personal policies. What are some of your policies? So I'm hearing one of yours, Lexi, is when I am so exhausted that I can't give my 100% attention or good amount of presence to someone I care about, I'm not gonna spend time with them just because I obligated myself to. Almost sounds like that might be like a personal policy of yours. Is
Yeah,
that
in this kind of example, for sure. There's obviously other
okay?
times where, if we're going to a concert and we stay up late and the next day we're all haggard and we're hanging out, that's different, right?
Okay.
But
Okay.
scheduling a weeknight dinner, it's like, yeah, I want to be present fully, especially after not seeing each other for so long.
Yeah. So maybe a personal policy of yours is I give myself permission to reschedule if I need to in order to really be my best self with someone.
Yes, I love
That's
it.
a great one. I
It
love it.
is.
I love that because there's so much. I mean, I have a strong obligatory seed in me. I was raised by a good German mom who's like, you will do this now. No, you cannot change. But right. And then I adored my mom. She's a complex person, yes. And so it takes something for me to kind of pause and do what you did, to rethink. It's like, okay, what is my personal policy here? So I really love that one, and I'm gonna maybe borrow it. I'm gonna give you a personal policy that I have. So I came up with a personal policy that I kind of needed to in the moment, had a family member ask me for money. And I thought, oh goodness, it can be kind of complex when family members with money and family. That's just something I've experienced in my life. So I made this policy in that moment. I'm not going to loan money to family. So the way that Vanessa, the author of the book, urges you to work with your personal policies and saying no is if someone asks you to do something and that's not in alignment with your personal policy, that you just say no because it's not in alignment with your personal policy. So in that case, that's what I did. I said, sorry, so-and-so, I don't loan money to family members. And it's something that could not be argued with. When someone says, I don't do this, it's sort of like, I have a personal policy that I don't eat after dinner. I mean, and I used to always, eat like, whatever, acting during a show or whatever. So now every night when I'm watching something, I don't have to make a decision each time. Like, ooh, that looks good, or right. I don't even have to go through all the cha-cha around. Am I going to have a spoonful of Nutella, which is yummy, but not if it's after dinner, because I just don't eat after dinner, right? And I'm not depriving myself. It's not coming from anything like that. And when that personal policy doesn't serve me anymore, I can certainly change it. But see how it just like takes away all the decision-making energy and it helps us because, decision fatigue is real.
Oh yeah. We make so many decisions in the modern world, and the less decisions we can make, the better our brain's going to be functioning because it takes a lot of energy.
Do you want paper or plastic, Lexi?
Neither. Let me just eat the food right there in the store. I'm not even taking it home.
They give me so many choices sometimes when I go to restaurants or stores. I'm like, what? Just, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's overwhelming. It is. And I would like to focus on something that you said.
Yeah.
I don't loan money to family. That's something that she talks about in the book, is saying I don't over I can't. Because you could try to argue with I can't. It's like, oh, well, why can't you? That whole stupid mind game thing. But when you say I don't, that gives you power. Because when you say you can't do something, that ultimately gives away your power to something external outside of yourself that you're not able to do. But when you don't do something, that's your personal policy, right?
Yep.
And that makes you empowered.
Yep.
People, I mean, they could argue, but again, those aren't people you want in your life. So the people that you want in your life are going to respect your boundaries, and they're going to look up to you for it, and you're going to be able to have a strong relationship because of it, because you're going to have that mutual respect. You're going to have your clear boundaries within that relationship, and that's what you need in order to thrive.
Absolutely. Such a great point. It makes me think of a time professionally where I had to create a boundary that turned out positive. I want to tell the story because we have such a fear that when we assert something that's important to us, especially certain demographics, like this is very true for women, that there's going to be some negative impact, right? And like you said earlier, what was the themes that I experienced in the class, why people don't say no? One of them is they want to preserve their reputation professionally and their relationships. So I was working at UC Davis doing a postdoc, and there were 3 of us directors, our assistant directors, and then there was like the head honcho. And the head honcho, we'll call him John. His name wasn't John, but we'll call him John. He would kind of do work at home and then saunter in the afternoon after we've been there since 9 in the morning, and he would just want us to hang out until 6 or 7 at night to meet with him because he would want an update and give us input and collaborate, and we like to do all that with him. But for me, I'd been there, I'd put in my 8 hours. I don't want to just hang out, right? So me and the other 2 assistant directors, we were kind of like mumbling a little bit about that. And we were, why do we have to wait around? But we all just did it. And then finally, one day I thought, this is no, right? Because it was like a personal boundary of mine that often we don't know we have them until someone violates them, right?
Yeah.
And then we're like, hey, wait a minute. So for me, it's like my personal policy is I work 8 hours and and when we schedule a time, stick to it. So anyway, I reached out to him, the head honcho, John, and I said, "Hey, John, I know you're coming in this today. Can we set up our meeting for 2 o'clock?" So I would just like put it at an earlier time. So even if
Mm,
he had to push it a little, it wouldn't be waiting around till 5 or 6.
yeah.
And anyway, so just doing that small thing and communicating, and I did communicate to him that my workday was, because I started at 9, I'll be leaving at 5, right? I didn't lecture him, I didn't shame him, nothing. I just
Yeah.
was telling him what my hours were. And you know what? We started meeting every week within that time frame, and it worked like perfectly. It worked perfectly. And over time, he actually had, I think, a lot of respect for me in a way that he didn't for the other two,
Oh, I'm sure.
because they didn't, it's almost like I was requiring the best from John instead of
Mhm.
allowing him to keep behaving in his worst.
Yeah. Yeah. And by setting that boundary with him and being like, hey, my workday ends at this time, I'm going to leave at this time, you could have a better relationship with him then. Because when y'all were sitting there mumbling amongst yourselves, pissed off at him, it's like that energy ruined the workplace then. And that's going to ruin the work that you're putting in too
Good
together.
point. Exactly. So it's really we have to undo this mythology that saying no is going to have a negative impact on our reputation and relationships. It's really the opposite.
Yeah. If you're in the right place with the right people, because there are times where you can set your boundary and do right by yourself and goes stop.
And if it does, then like your example earlier, that's data.
Yeah,
Like, I'm
exactly.
not in the right place. This is not, you probably have some sort of personal policy around that, how you're
Yeah.
treated in the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because really if you're not inserting yourself and your needs and saying no when you need to, you're doing yourself and everybody around you a disservice because you always are going to have this underlying energy like you guys did with John that was disturbing the workplace and making you guys upset. That will always be there if you're not being clear and setting your boundaries. And that's not good for anybody, right? Those kind of people who are going to say no to your boundaries, then they can have a little worker that's going to just work their tail off for nothing, and if that's what that person wants to do, that's fine on them, but I'm not one of those people. And by staying in workplaces like that, and I've done it way too many times for way too long at a time, I was always doing myself a disservice by not saying what I needed to and inserting my needs when I should have, right?
Yeah.
But it's all lessons, right? And now I've learned I'm not going to work for people that treat me poorly because I'm an incredible human being, and we all deserve to be treated the way that we treat others, and I treat people around me with love and respect, and I want that in return.
Absolutely. And I don't have it all dialed. I mean, I've given you a couple successes, but I mean, I just had one last week where I said no to my daughter, actually, and that didn't go well. So, I mean, it did ultimately, because I mean, I said no to us doing something together, and it turns out she really had her heart set on it. I didn't realize that, but still. And the reason I said no, and I just so you guys know background, I tend to not. I'm a mom who says yes a lot, but I couldn't do it emotionally. I had a really rough day. I was exhausted. Just like the thought of even going into a store to go shopping with her made me just want to crawl into a fetal position. So I was like, I can't do it. I'm not doing this. So we had to work through that. She was not, she took it very personally, but then we ended up having a conversation a few hours later. Turns out I found out she needs more time with me. I have a teenage daughter, 16. I think she wants all her own time and space, and I give her a ton of room, and she appreciates that. But it turns out I was doing too much of that. She kind of expressed, "Hey, I want to have time with you too, Mom." I was like, I mean, I want time with her. So it was just like,
Yeah.
so I mean, ultimately, I think it was a success, or, it was a positive, but
Yeah.
it wasn't for a number of hours. We had to really talk through things.
But see, that's beautiful. And I would argue that everything, and it's always a success if you can see the lesson within it, right? Because you're meant to be around the people you're meant to be around, right? You're meant to, yeah, have your tribe around you. So by you having that hard conversation with her, then you guys were able to talk about this thing that you didn't know existed between you, that you both wanted more time together. And like, what's more beautiful than that?
Yeah, right? Gosh,
Yeah.
that's music to my ears. Yeah, very true.
So saying no when you need to, it's going to end up reducing your stress. It's going to reduce your burnout because you're able to honor yourself, right? And then you're able to give your attention to the things that you really want to give your attention to. So that's going to be, increased focus and productivity on those things. You're going to have stronger relationships because of it. You're going to have greater self-awareness of what you really need and what you really want and what your personal policies are. You're going to get to know yourself, which is the single best thing that we can do for ourselves and for the entire world. So, yeah, do you have anything else to add today, Janine?
Gosh, so this is a topic we could have multiple episodes on, and maybe
For
we
sure.
will, because I know Lexi and I have talked about, we've said no to careers, we've said no to, relationships, we've said no to certain ways of thinking or certain ways of life, and all the sort of the kind of gifts that have come from that, including reassessing a no. And is a no still applicable now? That's happened in my life many times, where we're constantly unfolding organically as humans. And it was one of the things when I was in graduate school for social psychology, but I remember taking a course in developmental psychology. And one of the things that was frustrating for the professor, and definitely for us as the students, was as adults, the stages of development, psychology traditionally is really focused on child development, because it's so obvious, like from 1 year to the next, how much, I mean, a 3-year-old from a 4-year-old, it's like night and day and continues on. But the same is true for us as adults. We are constantly evolving. And I think that's the part I've enjoyed the most about my life. And one of the reasons why I adore you so much, Lexi, and our conversations are so gratifying and engaging, is because we're both really organically unfolding and changing a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's the best. It's
it's the
awesome. Like,
best.
I will change my mind a trillion times on the same things. I don't care. That's how we learn and grow. And at the end of the day, we don't know. We don't know right now. We'll find out between lives, but we don't know. So all we can do is enjoy the ride and enjoy the change and relish in the unknown.
Relish the unknown. Yeah. Yeah. And just, and be able to. So I would say the two things that I think we highlighted here for tools for saying no: one, set personal policies and stick to them. And then you communicate them with the language of I don't, not I can't. I can't is kind of victim mentality, and it opens the door for pushback, right? And the I don't is like, I don't. It's a declarative statement. It doesn't need justification, explanation. It's just one of my I don'ts that I think has helped me so much is I don't work on weekends.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tended to have sort of, computer white collar jobs. And even when I was in graduate school, I tended to be in long-term relationships. So if I worked on the weekend, I didn't get to see my partner. And so my choice, my personal policy to not work on weekends, I mean, there's always exceptions, but there gotta be exceptions, was me saying yes to relationships, to leisure, to fun.
Yeah. And because that's another amazing point, which we kind of highlighted a little bit, was when you say no to something, you say, A, you say no to many other things, but B, you say yes to so many things, right? And that's the beauty. By saying no to my friend that night and saying, hey, let's reschedule for next week, I was saying yes to honoring my body, myself, and taking care of myself and creating that space, right? So it's like this beautiful paradox, and it's just so important for self care.
And how did it feel?
It felt awesome. It felt amazing to do that because I was doing right by myself, and I know that I was doing right by our friendship and our relationship and our quality time together.
And the research shows, and it's in Vanessa's book, that people feel better when they say no. All the fears we have around saying no are just fears. So she's got some actual data where she surveyed people who said no when they really wanted to, and those who didn't say no, but they did want to. And she compared, we feel so much better when we actually say no when we really want to.
Imagine that, when we follow our hearts and do what we know we need to do, we feel better. Whoa, imagine that. But we all do things that we don't want to, right? And it's always going to happen. But again, the more you say no, the more personal policies you have, and the more aligned you are with yourself, with your soul, with who you are, and you know who you are, then the easier it'll come. It'll come like second nature, and it'll get better and better as time goes on. It's just practice.
Yep. And you could still be 60 and kind of grapple with saying no now and again.
Always.
As I am. So it's all about practicing. There's never perfection.
Exactly.
Well, this has been great. Such
Awesome.
fun with you, Lexi.
Yeah, it was a juicy discussion as usual.
Yeah.
It's always so much fun. So yeah, maybe we'll do more episodes on this because, like you mentioned before, Janine, we have so many different topics we could discuss with just this alone. So let us know in the comments if you like this kind of content, what kind of things you would like to hear us talk about and our experiences with saying no. There's many different things we could talk about. Thank you guys for tuning in to Bounce today and hearing our discussion on the power of saying no.
See you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.